Rynkiewicz is playing Blue-Red Delver. Rynkiewicz is a Grand Prix champion in the Legacy format. Merriam, well, he almost went back-to-back a couple months ago in Providence. Did win the Standard Open with Mono Blue Devotion. Lost in the finals with Combo Elves against David Shields playing Death and Taxes. See if Merriam can win one of these Legacy Opens finally with his favorite combo deck.
Yeah, playing Elves. Pretty good matchup here when he's on the play. It's hard for Blue-Red Delver to play a tempo game against Elves. They have so much mana acceleration, which we're going to see out of Ross. What's going to have to happen, I think it really comes down to these high-impact cards that Rynkiewicz has in his deck. How many of them can he draw, and can he do a good control impersonation for the first couple turns?
It's a Green Sun Zenith for a Dryad Arbor. Rynkiewicz will sacrifice the Misty Rainforest, and he will search out a land. We'll see what that will be. Volcanic Island is what he does search up. Yeah. So it's 19 apiece for these players.
And this is a situation where normally a Blue-Red Delver deck would just play their tempo game, get their threat down early, something like Delver of Secrets, and then start playing some counter spells and the like. Because Ross has so many ways to make 2 mana on turn 1 in his deck, he can actually punish this draw by making maybe 2 or 3 creatures on this next turn and just having enough pressure that Delver doesn't actually get Rynkiewicz ahead on the board.
Delver of Secrets is going to get the party started here. Merriam will untap again. He's got 2 mana available, 1 from the Arbor, 1 from the basic forest. He will draw a card. Natural Order is what he's found for the turn. Again, the goal of this deck is, of course, generate a lot of mana, kind of go crazy here as he's going to fire off a Glimpse.
Yep, and this has been, I've thought, an interesting evolution of Elves over the last year or so. Elves used to be this Glimpse combo deck, and Glimpse of Nature doesn't really combo much in the deck anymore. It is played as a value card drawer a lot of the time, and we're going to go see that. And, you know, Ross will probably draw 3 or so cards off this.
And this is a pretty good Glimpse here. Again, you're going to see Deathrite Shaman into Wirewood Symbiote. Going to, of course, untap the Dryad Arbor, pick up the Deathrite, replay it, so he gets to draw 3. Advances board a little bit, as Rynkiewicz will reveal a Stifle here to the Delver of Secrets, so Insectile Aberration has shown up to the party, and Rynkiewicz can start to apply some pressure.
Yeah, Stifle not particularly live in this matchup. There are things to Stifle, of course. You can stifle Wirewood Symbiote's activation, you can stifle any of Deathrite Shaman's activations, but none of them are, you know, a money stifle, as it were. The Combo Elves doesn't rely on one big trigger to put its pieces together. I suppose that you could stifle a Craterhoof Behemoth trigger, and that might be the best thing to stifle, but Ross has so many routes to victory that James is going to need some more pressure.
A basic Mountain will take care of the Deadly Insect, and now a Lightning Bolt will take care of this as well. So 2 Lightning Bolts, 2 dead creatures. James can't be too unhappy with that, as Merriam will untap those 3 lands and draw a card. We'll see what he can assemble on this, his 3rd turn of the game.
If he has a land, Ross can go for the daring Natural Order here and just try to get Craterhoof out and into play. There's not many ways that once a 5/5's in play that Blue-Red Delver can do anything about it.
Especially with 2 Lightning Bolts already cast. Elvish Visionary is where Merriam will start this turn. He will cantrip. We'll see what else he wants to add to the table here.
This probably means Ross will not get up to 4 mana. I say probably because it actually is still possible if he has enough of the combo pieces together that casting cards actually starts netting him mana.
Yeah. Cradle can certainly work its way into the equation as well. But you do have to kind of tread a little bit carefully when you do play against this Blue-Red Delver deck. And it's not like playing against Rug or Blue-White-Red, things that Ross is pretty familiar with, though he does have access to the deck list. So I imagine he took a look at that before the match did begin to know what he needs to worry about. Merriam's going to finally reach for that Dryad Arbor. There's another Wirewood. Pick this up, untap that. And now there is Nettle Sentinel, and unsurprisingly, unsurprisingly, Jack Kitchen with Imperial Painter up a game over David Long playing lands. Didn't think it was going to take too long there for Kitchen.
4 minutes into the round, just as called.
So Ross gets a little bit of action going there on his last turn. Dryad Arbor was his land too. And now here is a Gataxian Probe, 2 Natural Orders, an Elvish Visionary, and a Verdant Catacombs.
2 different arts on Natural Orders. Come on, Ross.
I know
you've been playing this deck for a while.
Many pros would not approve. I know that.
And what I actually like about Elves is how it does this semi-combo thing. You know, you now glimpse to draw 3 cards. You play Visionary Symbiote, which actually is starting to be, it's pretty much the backbone of the deck in a lot of the fair matchups.
Rynkiewicz going to take a long look at his hand. You see a Volcanic Island over there.
I mean, the advantage is because Ross has so much pressure on his creatures, you know, there's 2 Lightning Bolts in the graveyard and none of them went at Ross. So James has to slow his clock down so much just to stop Ross from going off that Ross can actually start doing value plays like Symbiote Visionary.
An attack for 3 is going to put Merriam down a little bit lower. He goes down to 13. Rynkiewicz does have that Volcanic Island that he's gripping, but he will deploy a Misty Rainforest before passing the turn back again. We know he has a Stifle, as does Merriam. Merriam will draw a card for the turn. Again, this is 4th turn of the game. This is normally the flashpoint for Elves. They can go off on 3. With a perfect draw, they can actually go off on turn number 2. But turn number 4 is really where the fireworks often begin.
Yeah, well, there's so little pressure here from Delver, from James Rynkiewicz and his Delver deck, that Ross can try to go off this turn. And we may actually see him try to do it, but at the same time, we may just see him draw some cards, play some symbiotes, just kind of continue the value game. And he does push in for 3, but it's kind of a half push here, right? So he could be swinging with Dryad Arbors, but no, he still wants all of his mana so that he can get as many cards as possible. And interestingly enough, his half swing here of just 2 creatures is as much damage as Insectile Aberration is dealing. So Ross isn't even falling behind.
Elvish Visionary shows up to the party.
Big draw here for Ross. Gaia's Cradle was the draw of that Elvish Visionary. Remember, with the Dryad's Arbors in play, that Cradle's currently tapping for 5.
See what land he wants to play. I'm not surprised he didn't want to play the Cradle. Let's see what this is now. There is a Zenith for just 1. Let's see if Rynkiewicz will respond. And he says that's fine. No. So Merriam's going to go searching.
It's probably just another Wirewood Symbiote. With all this mana that Cradle can activate, can get, I was going to say he could just draw a ton of cards. He's going to go for Deathrite Shaman here, though.
There's the potential here, right, where he might want to have that in play to gain some life, make sure that he doesn't die. Wouldn't be too surprised if that's the case.
With all this mana in play, Ross has really shot that tempo strategy of Delver into the ground. And the only backup plan, once Delver loses control of the board, then the lightning bolts start going at their opponent's face to try to close the deal. So Ross, pretty forward thinking in getting Deathrite Shaman, just saying, hey, all I actually need are life points here to stop your plan B.
Another Stifle was the draw there for Rynkiewicz. All right, quick update for you guys here. Dan Musser with Miracles quickly up a game over Shaheen Sarani. So a little surprised to see that result so quickly.
Yeah, Blue-White Mirrors can take a while, but remember, because the Miracles deck has access to the countertop lock, which they can get as early as turn 2, sometimes those games actually can be pretty quick. An early counterbounce, early Divining Top, and Shaheen can be packing pretty quickly. But back to the match in play here, you see a pair of Stifles in Rynkiewicz's hand. I think some extra lands that he's holding on to just in case he draws a Brainstorm.
He's got a true name too. I think actually the card that Ross might be most scared of again is Price of Progress right now. Only a 1-of in James's deck. He doesn't need to worry about it now because here's True Name Nemesis. We'll pass the turn back. So there's only so much Ross has to play around here. We'll see if he actually tries to make a move in, especially when he has a Cradle that can generate so much mana.
Yeah. Rynkiewicz is saving, it really seems like he's saving those Stifles for a possible Craterhoof Behemoth trigger.
But he can only cast 1 right now.
So the question, I guess, is can Ross make 2 Craterhoof Behemoths this turn? He does have 2 natural orders.
James says, you know what? Just forget it. You got a Cradle. I know you have 2 natural orders. I don't have anything. I've got 1 Stifle for 1 Behemoth trigger, and if Ross casts the other...
Right, that's the... Can't answer for the second natural order.
Well... Ross Merriam up a game here over James Rynkiewicz. Elves up a game over Blue-Red Delver. It's time to come back to the booth because it's time for another trivia giveaway. Rules or question? Your call.
I'm going to go with the question here.
All right, I've got the rules. Hashtag SCG Premium. Make sure you're following at SCG Live. My good friend Matthias here has a question for 3 months. And again, we'll announce the winner at the conclusion of our quarterfinal round. Fire away.
So if you were watching that game closely, you noticed a comment about 2 different natural orders there in Ross's deck. I know, but we're going to have a little poke at that. Natural Order actually is a card that is pretty old. Sometimes kind of hard to get his hands on. So we're looking for the names of either of the 2 sets that you could find Natural Order in.
Okay, so that's a fun question. What are the 2 sets that you can find Natural Order? And again, if you can name those, answer with the hashtag of SCG Premium. Make sure you're following at SCG Live, and we will announce the winner at the conclusion of our quarterfinal round. As we will head back down to the match, we'll take a look at our sideboards here, and we will find that Mr. Rynkiewicz has a Price of Progress, Engineered Explosives, a Smash of Smithereens, a Pithing Needle, a Dismember, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Blood Moon, 2 Pyroblast, 2 Submerge, and 2 copies of Flusterstorm. I expect to see Engineer Explosives come in here. You can make an argument for Pit the Needle. I expect to see, of course, Dismember and 2 copies of Grafdigger's Cage as well. Question for you, do you like Blood Moon in this matchup?
Boy, no, I typically actually don't like Blood Moon in this matchup. It just seems so unlikely that it could work. So the problems with Blood Moon here are, first of all, that Rynkiewicz can't play it before turn 3, and Elves has tons of mana creatures out in play by turn 3. A lot of them make green for him. It does turn off Gaia's Cradle, so there are things that Blood Moon can do, but tapping out for a sorcery on 3 mana can often spell doom for the Delver player, and it just seems slow, and it doesn't actually win. So I don't think he would bring it in. Maybe he brings it in just because there's enough other cards that he thinks are real bad in the matchup, so it does something, but I would like it to be better. I would prefer him to use cards like Submerge in this matchup, though Ross doesn't always have a forest. He has green mana, forest, maybe not. Engineer Explosives, though, as you said, that's the card he wants here. Pithing Needle, pretty good too.
On Merriam's side of things, the Needle, a Reclamation Sage, Scavenging Ooze, World Spine Worm, Sylvan Library, 3 copies of Abrupt Decay, 3 copies of Gall Therapy, along with 3 copies of Thoughtseize. That's what Ross's Black Splash is for. And then that Singleton Progenitus. What do you like there?
All right, so out of Ross's deck, I mean, I generally just like this matchup for Ross. And I'm not positive how many things he actually wants to board in here. I suppose the Reclamation Sage, so let's go back to Rynkiewicz's sideboard. It does have 2 Grafdigger's Cages in it, which is actually pretty good against Ross. I would say he could board in Reclamation Sage to blow it up, but the problem is that one of Reclamation Sage can't really blow up a Grafdigger's Cage very well because you'd have to search it up to kill the cage, which you can't do when cage is in play.
Yeah.
So, be interesting to see what Ross decides to board in, but my answer would incline to be not too much. Probably just Abrupt Decays. If he can get an early Delver, he can buy himself so many turns that it seems worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly see Reclamation Sage coming in here. Wouldn't be surprised to see Scavenging Ooze. You know, I imagine a lot of Ross's creatures are going to die, and Ooze can gain some life and maybe take over the game. It's just a big threat. Potential for Sylvan Library. I mean, Ross has a lot of different ways it can go. I wouldn't be surprised to see a discard package come in here either. But then that kind of, you know, doesn't make his deck as streamlined. So, again, we'll see what Merriam opts to do. I imagine his sideboarding plans that he's utilized against other Delver decks, like Rug Delver, he'll probably employ here.
Yeah, and to a certain point, you would expect, you know, maybe something like Rough Tumble out of Blue-Red Delver or some sort of sweeper, but there's actually not that much extra removal that Rynkiewicz can reasonably board in here. So it's possible that Ross just sticks with his Game 1 plan. Game 1 was pretty good for him, and if the other 2 games play out the same way, I don't think Ross will have many complaints about it.
Yeah, I typically see I typically see Rough Tumble in decks like this. However, because Rynkiewicz has Young Pyromancer ×4, Rough Tumble, not much of an option for him.
Yeah, he just can't play a sweeper, so which is, I think, why you see a little more of a commitment to cards like Grim Lavamancer or Forked Bolt, because he would like to try to have some sort of sweeper, but, you know, we don't even see cards like Fire Ice. I think the way James has built his deck, he's a little weak to this Elves matchup.
Does seem tough, especially against a very skilled pilot like Merriam. So we'll see if he can overcome that. He will be on the play here for game number 2. But game 1 was a pretty easy one there for Ross, and I imagine he'd like it to go that way again, so he can get out of this one pretty quickly and move on to his next match. Again, he will play the winner of Michael Derzo and Taylor Fujimura. So again, Death and Taxes versus Blue-White-Red Delver on the other side there for Merriam. And Death and Taxes is a great matchup for him, and Blue-Red Delver isn't too bad either. So we could see Ross with a pretty easy path to the finals. Again, Dan Musser, he's up a game over Shaheen Surani, Blue-White-Red Miracles, Esper Stoneblade. Again, Musser playing Miracles there. And then Jack Kitchen very quickly won game 1 with Imperial Painter over David Long playing Lands. Yeah,
I think the matchup Ross really would like to dodge in this top 8 would be the Miracles player.
Yeah.
Miracles is tough for Elves. Elves has trouble with Terminus and has trouble with countertop on 1. Not that he doesn't have options. You know, the printing of Abrupt Decay has given Elves a lot more game in that matchup than they used to have, but it's definitely his weakest matchup in the top 8.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. Rynkiewicz, again, will play first this game, and hopefully we do have time to join that Musser-Surani match.
Yeah, and we will. Yeah, we'll see here. Like I said, interested in Ross's sideboarding plan. He does have the 1 Progenitus in his sideboard. I'm inclined to say this is not a matchup where you need to have Progenitus because World Spineworm is Crater of Behemoth is already unkillable for the most part.
Yeah, you can get a little cute there. Maybe, you know, build up such a plan that your goal is just to, you know, resolve natural order without a ton of ton of elves in play because most of them are going to die. You get Progenitus, there's nothing that James can do about it.
Yeah.
Not sure if Ross wants to go that way or not, but we'll see because game number 2 is about to begin. And James with a Scalding Tarn.
Yeah. Were you to make it to the semifinals against a deck like Blue, White, Red Delver, perhaps, that has Swords to Plowshares, I really do like Progenitus. And a lot of times you see Progenitus come in against these blue control decks, but Blue, Red Tempo, Blue, Red Delver is so much of like almost a burn deck here that you don't really side the same way you would against control.
Deathrite Shaman here from Merriam. That's how he wants to start things off. We'll see if James wants to maybe bolt that. Deathrite is good to go, however.
Yeah, and this board is why I'm wary to play cards like Blood Moon. Look at what Ross has. He has a basic Forest in play, and he has a Deathrite Shaman already. If James, first of all, it's not clear that James has time to spend casting a 3-mana enchantment, and it doesn't even do anything on the board at the moment.
Yeah. It can definitely be a poor draw. And Ross has the ability, of course, to search for that basic forest pretty easily. Here's a Lightning Bolt on the Deathrite Shaman. So away that goes. Again, James wants to contain Ross's mana development, so he can't do multiple things in a turn like we saw the last game. And Deathrite is typically worth a Lightning Bolt. It's not the first time we've seen that. Rynkiewicz will draw a card for the turn. It's a Misty Rainforest, then it's a Young Pyromancer. There's the clock.
All right. Yeah, so he has his clock down. And that's good for him to have in the matchup. I do think, because just like, Ross has so many creatures, the clock, while it matters on Rynkiewicz's side, one question is like, does he have the disruption? You know, that's going to be very important. But this card seems fantastic in the matchup. Ross just doesn't kill creatures.
No.
So this is going to make a lot of power worth of creatures this game. I would say it's on, you know, it's not, James can expect this to make 4 or 5 elementals.
Now, there is a real chance here because Ross knows that Young Pyromancer is in James's deck that he did bring in Abrupt Decay to say, hey, I can't allow this to be a thing. And so maybe he brought in Abrupt Decay to take care of this. He did search up that Bayou rather quickly. Here's 2 mana. Yeah, he does have Abrupt Decay.
Right.
So away is going to go the Young Pyromancer and pass the turn back over to Rynkiewicz. I was unsure if Merriam was going to bring that card in, but clearly he did.
Yeah, and
there is the Wasteland to take care of the Bayou. So Merriam will lose a land there. He will draw a card now.
Yeah, Wasteland can actually be pretty strong against Elf combo. Elves only plays 20 lands and it actually overloads on fetch lands, so they frequently keep hands with 1 or 2 lands.
There is a fetch land. He will sacrifice this. There's a Stifle. Sorry about that, whammy. And now here's an Elf. It's just a boring old Nettle Sentinel.
Yeah. And this is a pretty good situation for Rynkiewicz. Using Wasteland and Stifle to employ the Delver strategy of tempo has been pretty good for him. He's got Ross still on 1 land and only playing Nettle Sentinel at the moment. There's no pressure on Rynkiewicz's side, which is worrisome, but he's got things under control at the moment. Now he just needs a clock.
That's one thing Jim's missing is he just needs a piece of pressure. You know, he's got him on the ropes. But Ross has the ability to draw out of this. Now here is a Pithaniel. That's going to lock down Deathrite Shaman.
What Rynkiewicz could really use as a draw to close things out would be something like Grim Lavamancer here. He's put so many cards in his own graveyard that if he, any ability to start gunning down elves would be really welcome for him.
There's a Cradle. This is a Glimpse, and now it's one of these turns.
Yeah, but Ross is going to try to pull away. If this Glimpse draws 3 or more cards, James's strategy to contain Ross is just going to get that much harder.
Dismember on the Nettle Sentinel. He's going to add mana with the Cradle, so he's got 2 green floating. Glimpse does resolve, and now here we go. It's a Wirewood. That'll draw a card. 1 green left. Pick this up. Replay this. That's the other green. That'll draw a card. Again, not the most impressive Glimpse, but not a bad one as we go back to Rynkiewicz. And we do have an update for you guys very quickly. Jack Kitchen takes down David Long. 2-0. Imperial Painter moving on to the semifinals. A very bad pairing for David Long.
A sigh of relief for all these Delver decks to see lands exit the top 8.
Yes and no. I mean, Imperial Painter does have Blood Moons, and these Delver decks don't like playing against that card.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not like the Painter's a great matchup, but lands can be just miserable for these fair decks. You know, Death and Taxes, you see, is one of the decks in the top 8. These are a lot of people here were no fan of playing against lands.
Grafdigger's Cage here for Rynkiewicz.
Yeah.
You see Merriam shuffling up, getting a Dryad Arbor out of his deck.
Rynkiewicz doing a great job of containing Ross, but you just have to think Ross's deck is so redundant that eventually he's going to break free. And you actually see, the life total is going the wrong way, actually going in Ross's favor.
Yeah.
And this is one of the fun parts about elves is sometimes you just kill them with 1/1s.
Sometimes you got to go beatdown style. And
Yeah.
what's really nice for Ross here is he's only really got to worry about one sweeper. There's one engineered explosives.
Right. And it's not even good beatdown, right? I mean, he's hitting you with a 1/2 and a 1/1 repeatedly.
Hey, don't you judge the beatdowns.
Oh, I mean,
these are some healthy
these are
beatdowns.
yeah. Well,
Right, they're
it's
kind of pathetic.
it's like a 5-turn clock, so sure.
It's another glimpse. We're going to go can tripping. Wirewood's going to get used. Pick this up, untap that, replay this, draw a card.
Do it again.
Yeah, might as well. Use this, pick that up, untap this, tap that, play this, draw a card.
Containing elves is really difficult because they do things like this all the time.
Here's a land. That's a Dryad Arbor. Summoning Sick. Pass that back. More importantly, that's a 1-power creature. And that might be more important than anything right now because now it's a 2-turn clock.
5 power on the board. And this is like so this is where it's really difficult for James, right?
Yeah.
You see his hand has
he's going to
nothing.
concede the game right now. He knows he can't get out of this. Ross had to go kind of manual, and he gets the job done. Ross Merriam wins this match over James Rynkiewicz. 2-0. Combo Elves moving on to the semifinals as well, taking down Blue-Red Delver fairly easily, honestly.
Yeah, and that's the kind of game where access to a card like Rough Tumble could have really helped Rynkiewicz. At the end there, Rough Tumble would have left Ross with just a forest.